Ain't going back, not gonna buy into all that. Hey, hey, ain't gonna hide, gonna let all the fears slide. Got Mother Nature is on my side. Got all of the loving growing inside.
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the New Now. I'm delighted to be here once again with Harald Kautz. It's been a while. It was a surprise session out of the blue, as it usually is with Harald. And today we are going to discuss extraordinary beings. Hello, Harald.
Good evening, good morning, whatever it is.
All over this lovely realm. So, Harald, maybe you can begin by telling our viewers what you consider an extraordinary being to be, and then we can get into it.
It's something I discovered with one-on-one sessions, kind of helping people in self-healing approaches. That I realized at a certain point that some beings function completely differently. And funnily, the first batch I got in kind of repeating patterns were humans that do not build up karma. It's like they come into really, really, really bad situations, eat a lot of shit, suffer from it, possibly break, lose bits and pieces of their soul. But if you start looking for the complementary aspect, like I learned it with the humans, if you have a victimhood lifetime, then you always need to check where's the perpetrator complementary lifetime so that you can complete the karmic cycles like a jigsaw puzzle.
Okay.
This is how it definitely worked to a certain point with everybody, with all destinies and karmas, that you could always complete the story, get the full picture. And it was always like all three aspects, victim, perpetrator, savior, that played out in one or the other lifetime. And then at a certain point, I realized there were lifetimes that simply didn't have the perpetrator aspect. And not even much of a savior, as it looked like spirits jump in to simply absorb the worst we have to offer as humans, and not forward the received trauma to anyone else. Like, this far we go, and we are not allowed to go further down the road into darkness, because enough is enough. And then someone jumps in, and I remember one specific story of a previous incarnation of a girl somewhere in Central Europe in the mountains. I don't know, 16th, 17th century maybe. And the entire village was mad with Christian weird ideas of the devil being all around the place. And this girl had bright green eyes from birth on. And the entire village was projecting satanic thoughts on her. And because she was basically in that position, she suffered from sexual abuse by the father, got pregnant at age 11, had her baby slaughtered by the entire village, because, of course, the father was not the villain. It was Satan's child that came, So first sacrifice, blood sacrifice to Satan, was the child. And then she didn't have a place to hide, to run to, because her family got too dangerous. And then she was living basically on the run, finding shelter, mostly with men who abused her, not thinking about a breakfast afterwards. And then she basically starved and collapsed somewhere in a little hut, being found by the villagers, tearing her to pieces with bare hands.
So this was a current person you talk with that had this past life?
Yes. Yes. And it was so like to the limits of what you can digest that. Of course, we try to find the perpetrator aspect to it, because you cannot dissolve a victim lifetime without finding the perpetrator aspect. Only if you understand the internal perspective of the perpetrator, then you can bring peace into the victim, because the victim can go into compassion with the perpetrator in the other lifetime. So this is how it normally works out. But in that case, we couldn't find anything. And after basically releasing all the energy from that weird life and reintegrating the aspect, she decided to go back to get her child out. Because the child was buried with a satanic ritual and the soul was still captured. So she went in again into that setup to save basically the soul of the child. And when she returned with a baby soul, we realized that, like in a galleria around, all the angels were standing welcoming her back home. And this is kind of where I realized, okay, now we have a reason to understand, or enough input to understand that when you find those altered karmic concepts with single humans, that if you take a very close look, you can see the wings. Which then was the case as well. This is kind of one thing that kept appearing, that after having learned everything about humans, I can imagine, to learn in self-healing processes, we had to start from scratch understanding how an angel works. When he breaks, you've got the black-winged ones, those who completely broke, and then the ones who never fell. And there was a really weird, like not conflict of interest, but the angels with the white wings looked down on the fallen ones in some form of arrogance, disgust, not understanding, how can you? And the broken ones really go to extremes. I remember one.
So how is this lady tied into this? I don't mean to interrupt you, because I do want to hear that. So you had a session with the lady who went back and brought her old child back from.
It's just a list of single sessions.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's like things happen and then you see repeating patterns and start to learn about reality from repeating patterns. So when I understood that actually angels do incarnate in human bodies, I realized, okay, let's look for more of them.
Okay, so
and once you open your eyes, you start recognizing the pattern with other people. Like second one, following exactly the same pattern, someone in, would say 90% tattooed on the body, being in pain rituals, hanging himself on hooks from the back through the skin every 2 weeks because he needed to process pain, being in 24/7 violence fantasies. He couldn't walk past another human without having the picture of slaughtering him. But in real life, he couldn't kill a fly. Nothing. No impulse. It was all kind of trying to internally process pictures of violence he had experienced without the capability of restaging it. And when he had finished his healing process, I had a really funny idea, because with all the fallen angels we know by name from mythology, there's not a single woman among them. Or have you heard of one?
No.
Michael, Gabriel, no?
I guess they're supposed to be androgynous, but
and
but the name.
no, they are male.
Okay.
So I asked him, actually, by the way, what the heck did you do with your women? And it turned out that they buried their women alive somewhere.
The angels.
Yes. Kind of, they're not that loving. Different species. I mean, to look into the function of angels, if you go back into the history of civilizations, you've got a planetary sphere that has animals and plants. And then at a certain point, the planet is basically ready to host civilizations. And then you have, I found them under two names, builder race or architect angels. Specific species of angels that come, introduce technology, and build a technological interface between the biosphere and the input, the genetic input that the planet needs to be able to host higher developed races. And so they are the ones who create a civilization. And then angels come in to safeguard the history of the civilization. So they come, either they stay in the field, on the field level, just balance the emotional fields in the collective, or sometimes they need to jump in, take an avatar, incarnate, and fulfill their roles while being incarnated. And if something goes wrong, especially the winged angels, not the architect ones, the one who maintain a biosphere, they get into deep trouble with their race, because either they fulfill their role and they balance a civilization, or they fail. And if they fail, they basically are subjected to severe punishment.
So what do you mean something goes wrong? How would you define that?
Like, I remember one lady who had a previous incarnation as an angel, being responsible for the planet that now is kind of this beautiful assembly of single rocks orbiting around the sun out there, the asteroid belt. And she was on duty to balance a civilization on that planet, and that civilization self-destroyed because she couldn't hold the field. And the last memory of that lifetime was that she was basically made responsible for that failure. And she was ritually killed and buried in her then form by other angels, just for that failure. For whatever reason they do that, I have no clue. I don't understand the soul mechanics.
So then she came here after being there, so to speak.
And later she got another job incarnating on Earth, kind of trying to help out here. But that was basically after the women got released. And with this one guy, I asked him, what did you do with your women? And it looked like they were in responsibility with the first creations that were hosting the human race on this planet. Like, we are in the fifth creation. Number 4 is the one that ended with Noah's Ark. And number 3 ended on a big battlefield. This is what we get from previous lifetime memories. And the angels that basically not messed up, but failed to safeguard the third creation. This is probably where the women were stored away, because the angels had the funny idea that if they take out the feminine aspect of their beingness, that the job is going to be more successful, safeguarding humanity. So with the creations that came after us, we didn't see the ladies anymore. And after I had asked him, he actually decided to unearth his twin flame. And like the universe sometimes is, funny as it is, she looked exactly like his human girlfriend. Extreme similarities. So this lady allowed the angel spirit to incarnate into her on top of herself. So that was kind of the first revived angel couple we had. Extraordinary people.
So you mean the ladies are coming back?
The ladies are back. And then I started seeing more ladies. It was like more, it continued as a big ritual. The next thing that happened was that from the astral plane, some form of opal-like colored egg came down, went through my crown chakra into my heart, and I could extract it from the heart. And then I was standing there with an astral egg and didn't know where it belongs. And the feeling was it belongs to the angels, of course. I mean, you revive the first couple. Egg is symbol for fertility. So, but what should they do with it was an open question. So it felt like right to hand it over to them. And they basically released it, and it went up again from their hands into their realm. And that was, let me think, like 8 months ago, 7 months ago. And the process, as far as I could feel it or perceive it, was basically a very, very, very tiny little opening of an additional timeline based on the 7th density. I don't know if the listeners are okay with the concept of timelines and densities.
Mm-hmm.
I think we talked about it, maybe to refresh it. Timeline split is like when cell division is happening.
Right.
Or you have one planet Earth, and after timeline split, you have 2 material realms that go into different directions, because some of the people on the previous version want to develop in one direction, other people want to develop in another direction.
Right.
So they have to split up into different realities. And in the phase where it happens, because the astral realm is not exactly in the now and in the here.
Right.
It's non-local, and it's also not defined in time. You get like a pre-shadow of the timeline split occurring in the astral. So before the split happens, you get a separation of spiritual qualities on the astral plane. Like if someone is in unity consciousness, he is in the astral plane with many, many, many other people who are in unity consciousness, and the law of attraction works only between them, so that you get a beginning separation between different types of humans, or not types of human, but stages of development. Right. And all the people who are in complete victimhood, they only have resonance with other people who are in complete victimhood. And at a certain point, the separation is so fully developed that the actual cell division on the material plane can happen. And And then it allows like large-scale Mandela effects, so that things that appear in the history of one planet do not appear in another. And since, I don't remember exactly, March, April, May this year, I had the feeling when I decide to perceive the third density where victimhood is present, I tapped into nuclear war. So, just scanning and absorbing and feeling through the emotional fields was not like the planet I was living on with tiny local conflicts, but mostly dumbness and stupidity. It was a full-scale nuclear war with all the suffering belonging to it. And I got, when I first published my perception, I actually got confirmations from people living in Rammstein who hear sirens going all night and see Russian bombers flying over the city at night. And next day, nothing has happened. So apparently there are people who are still shifting between densities, so that they momentarily get a perception at night, maybe when they're scared, going lower in vibration, they dip into that timeline, and then other people, or next day, they gather some strength and go up to fourth density, and there's no war happening. And I've got this type of perception from Rammstein in Germany and from Switzerland. Kind of confirmation that this split actually had happened. And so this is what I thought was going to happen over the course of this year. I could see on the astral plane everything was falling apart into density, stronger and stronger and stronger. I just had resonance with people that are more or less like me. Huge success rates with the healing topic. Normally, you would expect every second human saying, "Oh, healing, that's too much of a pain. No, thank you." This is what I know from other doctors and therapists. But with me, it was like a royal flush. Everything worked. And so I was expecting the split to happen. And then, I started with the angels over the summer. Then I started to see more and more star seeds, also with completely different necessities on the spiritual plane. Mostly entities with extreme abilities and powers, where the dark forces had crushed down on them with everything they had. Yeah, if you see, there's a powerful enemy, someone that could pose some form of threat or danger to me, you make sure that from the very first incarnation, those beings are broken into bits and pieces. And when it comes to the healing, you realize sometimes things are a bit weird, like implants. Normally when you see humans with alien implants on the energetic scale, you can take everything out. You just need to make sure that there are no kill switches included. And then you just empty it all out to get back to the normal human. With star seeds, sometimes the implants are necessary to adopt the very different spirit to a human body. And you can't just take everything out. So it's a bit more complicated at times. And when you start to see the abilities, it's very non-human.
So how would you describe the difference between the people that incarnate, let's say, as angelics and the starseeds?
The starseeds come in with more active properties. Like I remember till now I had 2 warriors, something an angel would never do. And both of them like quite tall. One was, I think, 2 meters 6 or 7. Back like that. But when he came in, he was completely broken. He was walking like an 80-year-old man because someone had taken his sword, something that is within his spirit. They carry a light sword, and had assassinated him with that sword. So it was sticking in his back, and his back was bent over from that energetic weapon. So part of the healing was kind of trying to find out in what lifetime that happened. And pulling the sword and putting it back into the place where it was supposed to be, which was standing upright in his spine. And if these people enter a room, they don't even need to fight, because it's like an item on the astral plane has symbolic power. It's not a sword you take to kill someone. It's a sword that doesn't allow in its vicinity to divert from the divine order. This is what it's for. So the entire thing, it's weird, but it sometimes reminds me of computer games. Where you get all the items and you do the right thing, and then you have superpowers from them. So I don't know if computer games adopt to the reality we live in, or if the reality starts to adopt to all the computer games we play. I have no clue. But this is how it works. Can't help it.
How do you know, like you've mentioned healed and you work with people, how would you define that they are healed, finished or done? What clues do they give you?
No, it depends. When healing is within the current lifetime, it's mostly about trauma and soul losses. And what you see mostly as an obvious sign of accomplished healing is when the voice is changing.
Really?
Because someone who is completely healed has the entire spectrum of frequencies as a capability of his expression. Like, you can have the tiny little head voice, you can have the throat voice, you can have the heart-based sound, you can get the anger, you can get intimacy down there. So the entire spectrum is open, and the frequencies adopt to the momentary expression of the body.
Makes sense.
And sometimes I can't even mimic it. Sometimes people come in with broken voices, where you can see it's jumping, from above to below. But the middle band of frequencies is missing. And when, let's say, you find a soul lost, you reintegrate it, boom, those frequencies are back. And the voice is balancing. This is the I think, best diagnosis method to see if something is successful. When it comes to working with previous lifetimes, just sometimes you don't find the problem in this lifetime. You have a beautiful childhood, everything is good with the parents, nothing bad happened, but there's still a signature of massive trauma. Then you need to look in previous lifetimes. And there, actually, the first goal is to become aware of what has happened. And when you have a full picture of a lifetime, you invite that aspect, like the spirit of the previous human you were. You invite him to enter your own system and align with the spirit that is in here. Because those are just aspects of a higher self. It's like when a higher self goes into a human form, he's choosing certain aspects of his entire beingness. And what incarnates is not the full being. It's just an aspect of it. Like one lifetime you go in with all your victim properties, another lifetime you go in with all the perpetrator properties. And the missing part is simply not tangible. It's not in. And when you start to integrate the other lifetimes, it's like the complementary abilities and aspects just unite. And when everything is done, this is what you could call the closing of a karmic cycle. Then all the aspects are gathered. And then you get a quality of a spirit that is more like the one of an author compared to a character in a book. Character in a book can be a villain, can be the savior, he can be the victim, he can be whatever, the neighbor that is just living a boring life and doing nothing. You can be everything as a character. But an author of a book is all of that because he couldn't write it.
Right.
And this is how we regain or how we gain our manifesting powers. As long as you perceive reality from that perspective of single characters, you would never be able to create something balanced. You need to understand how stories, how narratives work to be able to create something that is fully balanced. And this is why the steps are coming in exactly that order. And I've seen only a few people who have accomplished that gathering of previous aspects completely. I think 2 women till now I met that are done with that. And it's non-human. When they do like this, you see the light, coming out of the hand, like when you go with a hand through water and you see the bubbles created. They don't need to do anything. It's really like you sit with them for 10 minutes, you talk nonsense or nothing, you just are in their presence. And after 10 minutes, you're like, take a deep breath because you have seen something so energizing, healing without a word, sheer beauty.
Interesting.
And then after the star seeds and the angels had showed up, when doing family constellation work, collective aspects started to meddle in.
Family constellation work, what do you mean?
Like, for example, if you have someone that has his problems buried deeply in his family system.
Okay.
Like grandfather used to abuse children and father continued and now he's with his son in deep shit or whatever. You take a line of problems and misbehavior running in one or the other way through generations. It's good to try to find the one who initiated it. Funny thing is, mostly the one who is solving the entire thing as a last step is also always the one who initiated it in a different lifetime at the beginning of it, especially when it's running through multiple generations.
Got to clean up your own mess, so sure. Eventually.
Yeah. It's a law. It seems to be a law, at least among humans. It's working exactly that way. So to be able to get access to all the different stories coming over the different generations, it's good to do that family constellation work introduced by Bernd Hellinger. So you have representatives who step in as actors, take a role of someone, identify with that role, and then they get specific input from that one perspective. And then you can see much more precise compared to having basically one clairvoyant that tries to grab the entire story. If you distribute it on different actors and representatives, you get much more precise perception of things.
Makes sense.
And sometimes aspects of the collective take over roles in the constellation field.
Okay.
Like suddenly someone, like really funny, I remember we did MK Ultra sex slave deprogramming. And part of the programming is to steal the emotional body and store it somewhere in an underground facility. Mostly when I did it before, it was like the castle or some church or like smaller buildings where you had ritual black magic places for a family size. But with that one, we ended up in something that more looked like the basement of a bank with all those little boxes, and there were thousands and thousands and thousands of boxes that contained emotional bodies that were stolen by ritual abuse, probably connected to the adrenochrome farms.
Sounds like a bank.
It looked like a bank. It sounded like a bank. Banks are made from the same spirit, I guess. So it's not coming with that of a surprise.
No.
And we actually successfully emptied that one box, got the emotional body back. And then the voices of one of the people, not even in the field, he was sitting on the bench waiting to be called into whatever role. His voice changed. And he said, I can live without that one soul. But what, please tell me, if this becomes a habit? How shall we proceed here? And his voice was completely different.
So this was the MK Ultra case.
No, he was not MK Ultra. He was just a normal, healthy citizen. But his body was taken over by the spirit that actually thought he needed all those emotional bodies, which we know as Satan. And if he keeps reappearing every now and then. Sometimes he has something to say, and then he appears. So we already knew his voice signature. And also we lost fear. He's just a spirit. He's doing his job. He's doing what he needs to do. He's got his trauma. He's got his ideas how to heal it and solve it. And so we ask him, what do you think? What do you need? What do you need for yourself to be capable of letting go of all those emotional bodies? And he said, I would need my own emotional body back. And so we called in another representative to represent Gaia. Because Gaia is the only spirit in this realm who could do him this favor, because the emotional body of Satan is stored in the arks. Ark of Gabriel, Jewish Hebrew Ark, the Irish Ark, and the little leftovers in the box of the Pandora. And it's known where those arks are stored. So Gaia, that has access to every place on this planet as a spirit, was asked to go there, empty the arks, bring over the payload, which is the emotional body of Satan, and then represented by the two actors in the field. I mean, the real thing is happening somewhere else. But this is kind of how beautiful the fractal works. There is like the real reality, that is like the red triangle, the blue circle, and the green square in a kaleidoscope. One chamber with 3 forms, but when you look through it, you get all sorts of forms and colors and shapes in different sizes from the mirrors inside of the kaleidoscope. And this is how reality works. There's a very simple reality in the projector, but the form of projection is creating that fractal realm where the small repeats itself in the big. And this is how you can imagine when you have a seminar set up where things are represented by single humans. It's like in synchronicity with the things happening on large scale with the collective spirits. It's just an expression of what wants to happen within the collective. So it's not that people are doing this. They're just expressing by synchronicities that it is actually happening. And so that was the day when this collective spirit known as Satan, which is a planetary spirit that doesn't belong to Gaia directly. He was imported. He came. We had those talks just for those who don't know the previous ones. Like a planetary spirit that self-destroyed and now is like a ghost that tries to push himself into other planetary spheres to restage his trauma. This is kind of the concept behind it. So he regained his emotional body on that day. And that was actually the second time it happened. We had this similar story a couple of weeks prior, but there it was what was happening. It was explicitly limited to the 6th density, but we already knew kind of the way how to do it. And then it happened again, and that was basically the Satan of the 3rd density,
A previous
4th and 5th.
A previous story? Do you mean a previous patient or?
No. It was just another seminar where
I see.
enough people gathered to deliver the environment to be able to observe those things. And it developed in a very similar way. From another personal story, suddenly the collective aspects jumped in, and we could see how it developed. And that was kind of was two crucial weekends where the most important things happened. And the first one, on the first day, it was that healing of the satanic emotional body reintegration. And on the second day, we basically got input, because what the personal story was, a lady with alien implants. It was kind of a little bit irritated that when she was a child, she had to go to hospital for surgery, and they cut out some form of metal object from her leg. And she wanted to have a checkup if there are more implants in her. And she was stuffed. She had more than 50 implants in the body. This is what we tested. And most of it was Mantis made. So we tried to find out, or we had the opportunity to find out more about the history of the Mantis race.
Mantis.
And Mantis.
Ah, Mantis.
It's an alien race that is here, not incarnated, just on the astral plane. But still, they abduct spirits of children and implant them with the energetic implants to be able to observe through them and control them to a certain extent.
So you mean such as the praying mantis, that kind of mantis race?
Yes. I mean, okay. They're big, like the drones are like 2 meters, and the queen is 25 meters big if she appears in the astral. So needing to deal with 50 Mantis implants. That was kind of too much for simple energetic surgery, including some with kill switches. So nobody dared to give a hand trying to remove them. So it looked like it's necessary to call in some of the Mantis spirits to ask for assistance to remove them, because you never know when a kill switch is going off. So we had a beautiful opportunity to learn more about their history. And actually what seems to have happened was that humanity in the third density, being in nuclear war during the summer, completely degenerated, with the outcome of basically having the big white gray race as descendants of that type of humanity. So big white gray are humans on the timeline of the third density. And they messed up completely the planet. They had to leave. So they started to conquer and terraform other planets. And one of the planets they terraformed was inhabited by Mantis. So they put all the Mantis on big pyramid-shaped prison ships because they couldn't live in their biosphere anymore. They needed their own atmosphere to breathe. And especially something really weird, they cut out the heart of the queen, replacing it by an implant to disconnect her from her divine connection. Because with a living heart, they were very much connected to the divine. And it would have been impossible to abuse them in any way. But with a cut out heart, basically they took them hostage and they forced them as a very highly developed race to supply them with time travel abilities on the astral plane. Because the entire timeline was so deep in pain that the hive mind that took over the white gray had decided that the only solution to all the suffering is to completely delete the timeline. So they traveled back to our time, trying to make sure that humanity completely self-destroys, hoping that then their timeline would never come into existence.
So you mean
and all the suffering would disappear.
So that, you mean, is what could be going on now? Are you talking about our so-called present?
This is what was going on till a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, so pretty
having
much
the white grays here, trying as a satanic force to make us completely self-destroy, so that nobody survives.
Sounds about
right.
It's
It's a suicidal planetary spirit that had enough of the suffering, and the only basically logical conclusion of being evil without any chance to heal is to commit suicide. And how does a planetary spirit commit suicide? It's impossible, you know.
So what happened 2 weeks ago?
And then we called in some of the white grays into the, you know, like calling in a representative from the future of the white gray, and we gave them the plateau or the opportunity to negotiate things in a different form. Like, let's suppose we do not terraform your planet and take the hearts hostage. Would you be willing to let us participate in the time traveling abilities? So we don't force you in future, but we still have the opportunity to come back here, kind of first step. And it was like a form of negotiation that was removing more and more and more suffering from that timeline. And we always had kind of a checkup, the lady with the 50 implants. We didn't do anything about it. We just kept testing how many implants she had. And the more healing came into the timeline, the less implants were left over.
Makes sense.
So it's like observing Mandela effect unfolding.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, it was kind of, it needed decisions that the representatives of the white gray could not make.
Mm.
Only the hive mind could make them. So the hive mind was called in. And that was really a cute moment because he just made some calculations whether the concept works or doesn't work. And when the hive mind realized this is actually a possibility to shut myself down completely, as an AI, as a completely traumatized planetary spirit, he gave his okay. And then there was some form of big prayer to close that chapter and to the divine to completely extract the loop from realities. And it sounds completely weird. Like, when you're in the situation, it's like, what's happening? When you try to talk about it, you really need to check with whom you're talking, because some people will find it arrogant or stupid or unbelievable. So part of the game is always to check if you have any confirmation that something has happened on the material plane.
What did you check?
I had one friend. She's quite a talented healer, a lady, an Italian lady. She lives in the town where my father lives, running the local cafe. And she always was a big Mantis fan. And we had endless discussions. She wanted to pull me in, basically acknowledging my Mantis implants and cherishing them and utilizing them for spiritual work. And I kind of found those implants manipulative, so I very slowly started to remove mine that I had until I completely freed myself, but I didn't really feel like discussing it with her because she was so into the Mantis business. That would have been the end of our friendship. And just letting her know that I removed them, was already kind of a danger. And I had good news for her because I basically witnessed the Mantis timeline going into healing. No hostage taking by white grays. So no chance that they mistreat anyone, with a hard back. They can't act against divine order. So I just wanted to let her know that if she again meets some Mantis out there when she goes to astrally travel, that from now on, I fully trust them as well. And you know what she said? What the fuck are Mantis? I never worked with Mantis. I don't even have a clue they exist. She had zero knowledge, memory, imprints, nothing. All gone. She said, the only spirit I've been working with, it was always Jesus. So this is kind of where weird things find weird confirmations.
Interesting.
Plus, subjectively, if today I tune into the third density, I hit the void. There's nothing. Doesn't exist. I hope if anyone is still basically experiencing third density nuclear war, something apparently went wrong, please let me know. But I would expect that this is also just in the memory of people, but actually it never happened.
Not surprised.
That one erased completely.
May I ask how we tie all this in with the archons of the present experience? the people are having?
This is very, very good question, because that was happening on the next weekend. Bringing in the emotional body to the satanic spirit that is within the higher densities was one thing. On the next weekend, he reappeared, and we continued with putting things and Humpty Dumpty back together again. And he actually managed to reconnect to Gaia and Source, kind of accomplishing the full healing, like with a human. Very touching, like he was crying his eyes out when he could feel Gaia again. She called her his mother, which is something to the day I don't exactly understand, if it's metaphorical or if there are forms of motherhood within planetary spirits, no clue. And then just allowing the thought to get reincarnated. He said, no. I want to sleep on the lap of Source for 1,000 years before I even think about reincarnating. It was really cute in that healed state, lying on the floor, crying his eyes out. And actually, there was one incarnated angel on that seminar. And she had a good connection, of course, as an angel to Source. So sometimes Source directly talked through her. And he said, we might face a problem here. Because if I take Satan back, how can we achieve healing for humanity? Because humanity is still carrying his echo.
No kidding.
And what became basically visible, apparent, that like the angels are the network administrators, the coaches, the balancing power to the consciousness. The dark realm is basically like in a mirror symmetry, the balancing power for the subconsciousness. And if all the archons, basically Satan's biosphere, would have gone with him back to Source, then there would have been no balancing power to the subconsciousness, and it would have stayed subconscious for keeps, or at least long enough to allow self-destruction. And so something really funny happened. The archons volunteered to stay, but not as like that power that tries to push humans into self-destruction, just as the power to bring back the subconscious, the traumatic, the painful into the consciousness to allow humans to work themselves, to heal, to reaccomplish things they have lost. So at the end, basically, and this is how it needs to be, nothing changed, but everything changed. You cannot have a jump from A to B, because timelines are a continuum, so you need to change direction at a certain point.
It's always the way it works. Nothing changes, everything changes. You can't prove anything, but you can just, yeah. Weird. So we might as well have never spoken, it wouldn't make a difference. I mean, somehow it's weird. Somehow I feel the need to share those experiences, because they're just beautiful, and they are the essence of what I learned from all the healing sessions, or from all the self-healing sessions. Oh, it's beautiful.
Every single step in the collective had like a previous story that was on the single human plane. So it was always a human accomplishing his healing step in the small. And this is what called in the big spirits, the collective spirits, to basically follow in the collective. And it had such a beautiful magic to see how it developed. Also, there were like a couple of spin-offs that might be important to mention, because of the Mantis under the big white gray also went further back into the history, into our past. And they messed with the Draco race, also stealing their hearts in a way, or disconnecting them from the divine. Leaving what we know as Dracos today as one of the cruelest species ever. And that had to come to some form of solutions. So Dracos appeared to be back what they originally were, like dragons, the most heartful and beautiful beings in the creation. And something that also was very interesting, it was kind of bringing some clarification into what happened to the elves. Because it looks like in the third creation, they were still incarnating completely as their own species. And when then basically with the beginning of the biblical history, with the opening of the box of the Pandora, which means expulsion from paradise, there were some conflicts between incarnated humans and incarnated elves, because the elves could not understand why the humans rejected that pain and accepted the apple, accepted to follow the satanic path. And they were looking down with some arrogance on those stupid humans, and not realizing that they dropped out of compassion with the humans. And we had a single healing process where we actually looked into a lifetime. It wasn't apparent that it was an elf incarnation. From the very beginning, it was just like a lady that had extreme fear to lose her children, and she wanted to know, why do I have that fear? So we went back in a number of steps of lifetimes and found the repeating motive, the repeating pattern. And then when we ask for the initial lifetime where it originates from, it was like she made a deal with a demon, and her part of the deal was to blood sacrifice her own children. And then, because she didn't have any anymore, she became jealous of the humans and started being kind of the wizard lady living in the forest, pretending to give them medicine. But she started to poison them slowly, to kill also the human babies, just out of an evil spirit. And it turned out that actually this apparently was an elf incarnation. And that it was systemic, that the elves all sacrificed their children and consciously decided to not incarnate anymore. And But the interesting part was the demon that made that contract. He appeared to be an evil enemy. But during the process, it turned out that that evil entity actually was the shadow of the elves. The part of their soul they did not want to acknowledge, to see. So it was like a shadow being created out of themselves, looking exactly like them. But back then appearing as an external force.
Where the dark elves come from, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
So lots of clarifications of bits and pieces of human history that you don't find in the books. When you do past lifetimes, jigsaw puzzle pieces just fall together. It's kind of nice.
It's been too many books I've read in my life that they claim to be science fiction or fantasy that you can just feel are, intuiting what really happened, and so it's very interesting to see it kind of corroborated in your experiences.
Yeah. And another thing that happened after those two weekends, after I was really, 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 really happy that I have 99 point something success rates with the running processes, I dropped back into the normal reality, working my butt off for an entire week, having only 2 successes. And everybody else was like, oh, healing? No, this might be painful. I'd rather do it another time or don't do it at all. So I found myself back at square one after that nice royal flash with the humans that really went for it. Which in a way is again a confirmation that 6th and 5th and 4th density are reunited. So the entire split that was supposed to basically end up in a cell division, that we get different planetary spheres, it's all called off in a way, or the process restarts, giving everyone again a chance to make a better choice. So maybe we just bought some time for that. Maybe it's called off. I have no clue. At the moment, there is zero diversion between the densities. I don't feel any splits anymore. My resonance is again calling in people that are either living complete victimhood or something within the drama triangle, a little bit higher, and still have to learn lessons before they just shift.
What I love about talking with you, Harald, is it gives me more of a vision for my feeling that I've shared with people, that you use your imagination, anything is possible, and it goes beyond what most humans consider as the challenges, what's gone on, what can go on, our history, our potential futures, and everything else tied into what you've just shared, which is very, very interesting.
Difficult to put it out. I was considering just putting it on paper and burying the paper somewhere deep in the ground, hoping that somebody finds it in 1,000 years.
Sometimes I think these experiences are like magic. They come, they hit you, you have an experience, you feel it, but you can't prove it to anybody.
I mean, time will prove. It's or not, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter if anything is going to be proven. The only thing that matters is whether humanity comes into healing or not. And or if that self-destruction fantasy of the AI is echoing so strongly in ourselves that we actually commit the crime at the end of the day. It's not sure. I mean, you hear a lot of things. It can be fear-mongering, thinking about all the nuclear weapons carried to the Ukrainian borders. Or the NATO-Russia borders. It's still like having two two narratives if I want to be optimistic, I would say, well, they chose an agricultural land with low population density to destroy all the weapons stored in Europe. Kind of, this is one way to look at it. And you can trust the elites that they have become aware of that the most evil things are called off. And then it really might be just fear-mongering of a few.
Yeah, perhaps it's just a story. Could be a story just to help us face our fears.
Yeah, maybe it's brought up explicitly to help us wake up.
Seems to me everything is. You know, I go from angry to happy to sad to pissed off, etc. Like all the all the emotions that come with working and sharing and doing these kind of explorations like you're doing. And it's a breath of complicated, we'll say, fresh air to chat with you. That's how I'll put it, to hear a different perspective on what's possible and how there's always solutions. They don't, not necessarily ones you can imagine, but they can be imagined, which is something that's I would say is good news for people that could be listening to this conversation today. All right, perhaps we've come to a natural end to our chat on extraordinary beings. I know we could go on forever.
No, it's a good point to think if I forgot anything important. But if you don't find a hole in the story, I guess the most important steps are mentioned.
I think they are. I mean, obviously, there's 100 different paths we can go down in what we've brought up and chatted about. I mean, each one of the points you made could be discussed for many hours, or written into many books and then buried in the earth to see how that gets absorbed into our futures or our present. But I think you've given people enough to chew on in this conversation where they can at least begin the kinds of explorations they may need that are, let's say, out of the ordinary, even into the extraordinary, so that they might be able to find some answers for the challenges they're currently facing, whatever they may be.
Yeah, I skipped two details that might be interesting. One is there was a fifth arc where I didn't exactly know where it is, but I heard that it contained the original blueprint of human DNA. And that was reconnected to Gaia. So that basically all the healing processes for humanity can be speeded up.
You think that's the one under the Sphinx that Edgar Cayce talked about, perhaps?
Possibly it was there. Actually, it was in Ethiopia.
Ethiopia.
Yep, this is where it was found. And this was kind of important or interesting because it is to be expected that many, many people develop symptoms of disease while healing.
True.
Yeah, so if anything goes wrong, you can moan and call it something bad to happen. Or if you get some form of disease symptoms, you might as well say, wow, my body is finally reorganizing. Let's put all the love and healing energy into the process as possible to accomplish the healing as quick and good as possible, instead of dropping painkillers and antibiotics and whatever. So this is kind of one of the things. And the other one, where I'm not exactly sure if it is it, the entire process involved technical facilities that basically are placed around the equator, but not exactly on the equator. The triangle is a little bit shifted by a couple of degrees against the Earth magnetic field and rotational axis. And it has to do with running matrices. Apart from the divine matrix, kind of additional matrices to allow certain groups of beings to experience an altered history. So you split off basically a consciousness field by shifting the axis a little bit so that you don't have field interaction anymore between the two field structures. And those facilities were shut down. So
by
the entities running them that were responsible to give humanity that extraordinary period of time to experience what we have experienced. But now it's back kind of to the Earth axis, so it's easier to connect in depth to Gaia, to nature, and there's no running matrix grid anymore. Looking for it.
I'm assuming that's the good news you had mentioned.
Yes. Both of them actually are really good news. Okay, but again, everything I said, this is only a subjective perspective on kind of splinters of possible collective developments in the private sphere, basically expressing themselves in the smaller fractals of reality. So I would be happy if it turns out that it also happened on the big scale, because then not the condition of the planet has changed, but the trajectory and the direction of development will be a different one from here on.
I'm all for it. Yeah. Feeling the challenges and doing the work and living here and wanting to escape from this work, and then realizing I'm quite literally chained to it by my own heart. And then, you and I haven't talked for a couple of months, and then coming back to have this new information put forward. I'm sure a lot of people might have a hard time digesting all of it, but, I think if they go to the gist of it and the feeling of it, the fact that, it seems healing and happy potential is possible. Well,
I would suggest basically keep it in the back of your head as a possibility. And if you should see things on the material plane confirming that something has shifted, massively shifted, dig it out again and then start giving it some weight. Until now, it's just like a possibility. Maybe it really needs time for the entire collective to basically buy into that dynamic.
Of course. Not everyone's moving at the same speed, so they have to kind of catch up how they need to, I would guess.
Okay.
All right. So, well, Harald, thank you so much. I will leave a link to your website if you like, Time Loop Solutions. Anybody wants to contact Harald or has any suggestions or questions for potential future chats, we can't make any promises, but feel free to leave your comments below. Please like and subscribe. And Harald, is there anything you may like to leave the viewers with?
Yeah, Time Loop Solution.com, no S, as far as I remember.
All right. Well, Harald, thank you once again. You've given people all kinds of things to consider, all kinds of ideas to go with, and all kinds of potential for them to work towards. If they have found themselves at a dead end, I'm going to say there's nothing but options and solutions, and, to go outside the box, Pandora's box and all the other boxes, and you'll probably find what you need one way or another. All right. Harald, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining us so late in your, or early in your morning, late in your day, and I'm always ready for more anytime it seems to be that the stars align for us and we get a chance to talk. I appreciate your time here, Harald. Bye-bye, everyone.
No one tells me where I should start. Freedom.